Imagine being trapped in ice for years, then realizing your only chance of survival might be eating your friends. In 1845, 128 elite British sailors vanished off the face of the earth. They were riding the most high-tech ships of their time. They had enough food to last 5 years. Yet the Arctic swallowed them whole. For decades, the world thought they all died together in the freezing dark. But shocking new evidence suggests a much more terrifying reality. A reality where one man may have outlived them all. Chapter 1. The Unsinkable Ships. To understand how this nightmare started, you have to look at the sheer arrogance of the British Empire. In the mid-1800s, Britain ruled the waves, but they had one massive, embarrassing blind spot: the Northwest Passage. They wanted a shortcut to Asia through the Arctic. It was the ultimate geopolitical prize, and to get it, they put together the space program of the Victorian era. They took 2 massive bomb vessels, the Erebus and the Terror, and heavily reinforced them with thick iron plating. These weren't just ships, they were floating fortresses. They were fitted with internal steam heating systems to keep the crew warm, a 1,200-volume library, and even a mechanical organ for entertainment. And the food? Unprecedented. They packed over 130,000 pounds of flour, 30,000 pounds of salt beef and pork, and most importantly, 8,000 tins of preserved meats and vegetables. They were prepared for anything. Commanding this massive expedition was Sir John Franklin. He was a seasoned explorer, but he was also 59 years old and heavily overweight. Some whispered he was past his prime, but the public loved him. In May 1845, the ship set sail from England with 134 men. After a quick stop in Greenland, 5 men were discharged and sent home due to illness, leaving exactly 129 men to sail into the frozen unknown. In July 1845, a British whaling captain spotted the Erebus and Terror moored to an iceberg in Baffin Bay. The men were in high spirits, waiting for a clear path through the ice. That was the last time any white man ever saw them alive. They sailed into the fog, confident that British engineering would conquer nature. But the Arctic doesn't care about empires, and very soon, those high-tech ships would become something else entirely. Chapter 2. Into the Deep Freeze. Imagine a winter where the sun sets in November and doesn't rise again until February. That's what the crew faced by late 1845. They safely wintered at Beechy Island, but 3 young sailors died of illness. They buried them in the frozen dirt, hoping the worst was behind them. When summer arrived in 1846, the ice thawed just enough for the ships to push further south. They were making progress. They were getting closer to completing the passage. Until September 12th, 1846. Off the coast of King William Island, the ocean froze solid around them. The Erebus and the Terror were completely trapped, locked in a vice grip of pack ice that stretched for hundreds of miles. You have to realize Arctic pack ice isn't smooth like a skating rink. It's a chaotic, jagged nightmare of moving, grinding ice boulders. The pressure against the ship's hulls was constant. Day and night, the wood groaned under the strain. The men lived in a state of perpetual freezing dampness. Coal supplies for the heaters began to dwindle. The walls of their cabins coated over with thick ice. Desperate, they waited for the summer of 1847 to melt their icy prison. But summer never came. The ice didn't melt. 1847 brought an unprecedented climate anomaly. The ships remained locked tight. Panic began to set in. Then tragedy struck the leadership. On June 11, 1847, Sir John Franklin died. We don't know how, but his death shattered the crew's morale. Command fell to Captain Francis Crozier. By early 1848, they had been trapped in the exact same spot for 19 months. Men were getting sick at an alarming rate. Their teeth were falling out. Their skin was bruising black. Scurvy was taking hold. But there was something else happening to them. Something much worse than scurvy. The men were losing their minds. They were picking fights, experiencing wild hallucinations, and completely breaking down. Chapter 3. The Poison Inside. To understand why the crew was deteriorating so fast, we have to look closely at the very thing meant to save them: their food. The British Admiralty had rushed the food contract to the lowest bidder, a man named Stephen Goldner. To seal the 8,000 tin cans quickly Workers used cheap, thick lead solder. They were sloppy. As the cans sat in the ship's holds over the years, the lead slowly leached directly into the meat and soup. Every time the men ate to survive, they were ingesting heavy doses of pure poison. How do we know this? In the 1980s, scientists exhumed the bodies of 3 sailors buried early in the expedition on Beechy Island. Thanks to the permafrost, they were perfectly preserved. When scientists tested their hair and bones, the results were terrifying. Their bodies contained lethal, astronomical amounts of lead. Lead poisoning causes extreme fatigue, severe abdominal pain, paranoia, and outright madness. The leadership wasn't just dealing with a cold crew, they were dealing with a heavily poisoned, psychotic crew. Captain Crozier realized staying on the ships was a death sentence. On April 22, 1848, after 585 days in the ice, he made a desperate executive order. Abandon ship. The 105 remaining survivors piled onto the ice. They left a single, chilling note hidden in a stone cairn on King William Island. It stated the ships were abandoned, Franklin was dead, and they were going to attempt to walk south toward a distant trading post. But look at what they brought with them. Because their brains were completely fried by lead poisoning, they made catastrophic decisions. Instead of traveling light, they dragged massive wooden lifeboats mounted on heavy sledges. Inside the boats, they packed curtain rods, heavy writing desks, and formal silver cutlery. They were walking skeletons, poisoned and freezing, dragging thousands of pounds of useless luxury goods across the most brutal terrain on Earth. They called it the Death March, and it was about to get much worse. Chapter 4. The Ultimate Taboo. As the men marched south across King William Island, their bodies completely broke down. Scurvy rotted their gums until their teeth literally fell out of their skulls. Old wounds reopened. An Inuit hunter later recounted seeing a party of about 40 men walking south. They were thin, haggard, and dragging a boat. They couldn't speak English well anymore. They could only gesture for food. By the time the last survivors reached the southern edge of King William Island, all discipline dissolved. Starvation drove them to the ultimate taboo: cannibalism. For over a century, the British public refused to believe civilized English sailors could do such a thing. But modern science proved it beyond a shadow of a doubt. In 1997, bioarchaeologists analyzed human bones found at the campsite. They found unmistakable jagged cut marks around the joints. The flesh had been deliberately carved off. Even worse, they found bones that had been broken open and boiled. They were extracting the bone marrow. The very last survivors were literally eating their comrades to stay alive for just a few more hours. They were trapped in a hell of their own making. One by one, the campfires went out. One by one, the men fell into the snow and never got back up. Official history states that every single member of the Franklin expedition perished right there. 128 dead men. But local Inuit lore tells a very different, deeply chilling story. A story about a lone survivor who refused to die. Chapter 5. The Ghost of the Arctic. In the late 1860s, an explorer named Charles Francis Hall interviewed local Inuit families. They told him a story that sent chills down his spine. They claimed that long after the main camps had died out, one lone white man was still wandering the Arctic. According to the oral histories, this man was tall, robust, and had survived for years alongside a few remaining crew members inside a trapped ship. Eventually, those crew members died too, leaving him entirely alone. The Inuit reported seeing this last man hunting by himself, wandering aimlessly across the ice fields of King William Island. He had successfully adapted to the brutal environment, becoming a literal ghost of the British Empire. Who was he? Was it Captain Crozier, a man known for his incredible survival skills? Or was it an unnamed sailor who outlived his officers by resorting to the unthinkable? We may never know his name, but somewhere out there, in the frozen, unforgiving wastes of the Arctic, the bones of the sole survivor rest alongside his 127 crewmates, a grim monument to the price of human arrogance. If you want to uncover more of history's most terrifying, unsolved mysteries, hit that subscribe button right now. Leave a comment below. Do you think anyone actually survived the Franklin expedition? See you in the next video.